Sorry guys, I don't know how to start this video. Welcome to the channel. Name's Lightsaber Samurai. If this is our first time meeting, I review video games and stuff. Today, we are talking about the PlayStation Move, and this is a very important video that you've dropped in on because this is 7 years in the making. So let me quickly explain for those of you who haven't heard this story. Gotta rewind back 7 years ago. The year is 2016. It's summertime. I'm sitting on the couch relaxing to one of my favorite YouTubers on the platform, which is Metal Jesus Rocks, and he and Kelsey Lewin were doing a buyer's guide on the wonderful PlayStation 3. And while I was watching this, I was hoping that they would cover the PlayStation Move because at the time, the PlayStation 3 was on its way out, making way for the PS4, Xbox One. People were selling all of their 7th gen stuff to buy 8th gen hardware, and I was scooping all of that up on the cheap, including PlayStation Move games. My brother had bought me a PlayStation Move a few years ago for Christmas, and so I was actually a fan of the peripheral. I was buying a bunch of Move compatible games as well as Move exclusives to pad out the library with, and to my surprise they began to cover the PlayStation Move on that episode, but this is what they had to say about the console.
Okay, so we covered the controllers, but there's one more controller, isn't there?
No, there's not. No, there's not.
The infamous Move. So I'm a proud owner of the Move.
As of today.
Of today. It's funny because we were doing this video. I'm like, oh, we gotta cover the Move. Like that was. I mean, it wasn't a major thing, but I mean, Sony tried to make this a big deal.
Yeah. It's just really gimmicky. It doesn't work well outside of the Wii, and I think most of you guys have known this if you've played with the Kinect or with the PlayStation Move. There are some good games, or some at least entertaining games, but for the most part, it's just a little bit too clunky and gimmicky, and just not an experience that you absolutely need to have.
Yeah.
Naturally, I didn't quite agree with all of the assessments that they made about the PlayStation Move, and so my thought was I would just make a response video and make a response, tell them why the PlayStation Move was awesome, show them some games, show them some gameplay footage, and Metal Jesus Rocks would watch the video and say hooray, and maybe I'll give the Move a second look, and good job Antoine, and yada 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 yada. Needless to say, at this point I hadn't had a YouTube channel, hadn't made a video, hadn't picked up a camera, didn't know anything about it, so in my naivete I thought I was just gonna go out, make a video, get a bunch of views, and you know, it'd be good to go. Needless to say, once I picked up my camera phone at the time, which was 4 years old already in 2016, tried to shoot a video. It was god awful. Some of the worst stuff you'll see on the internet. I promptly deleted that and told myself, well, let me just start a YouTube channel. Once I get good enough to make videos that look as good as Metal Jesus videos, then I will do a proper response, and hopefully I can get him to watch it then. We are 7 years later, and honestly, I could have made this a while ago. I feel like personally that I reached his level of production value about 2 years ago. And so here we are in the year 2023. I'm getting ready to move and tear down all of this that you see around me. So I figured before I move out that I would give the coverage and make the legendary PlayStation Move videos. So without further ado, I'm just gonna get started and talk about the hardware, then we'll talk about the games, then we will answer the question, should you actually collect for it in 2023? Okay, so first off, we gotta talk accessories, because to enjoy the PlayStation Move properly, there are some things you are going to need to get started with. And first off here, we have the PlayStation camera. This here is an evolution of the PlayStation iToy camera that came out on the PS2. There are a bunch of weird games for the iToy, but you'll need this new version. It plugs up via USB. You just pop that in the USB port in the front of your PS3, and you're pretty much good to go from there. It'll pick up your Move wands and other peripherals, and actually we should talk about the controllers real fast. Okay, here's the main item right here. This is the PlayStation Move wand. Very similar in design to Nintendo's offering for the Wii, but I very much like this design a lot better. It's a more premium build. The cylindrical design fits better in your hand, and also there's more functionality with 4 face buttons, a move button, and a trigger on the back, which the Move had a trigger, or the Wii had a trigger as well. I like this trigger better. Less commonly known, but just as important, is the nav controller. Again, this is equivalent to Wii's offering with the nunchuck. However, again, better build quality, better design, better ergonomics, more functionality with 2 face buttons and a full D-pad, as well as your L1 and L2 buttons on the back of there. So these are essential for playing pretty much every game, but to enjoy some of the other games fully, there's a couple of other things you're going to need. Let's talk about those. Light gun games are a staple on the PlayStation Move, and you're going to need a really good light gun attachment to get the most out of your Move. This one here, I don't know if it has an official name. It's the PlayStation Move shooting attachment, I believe is what its official name is, and this thing is fantastic. It's got a fantastic build, a fantastic design. Again, it feels good in your hand. The trigger on it feels absolutely fantastic. This is my go-to when I'm playing some light gun games on the PlayStation Move, and again, this is a 10 out of 10. Definitely need a shooting attachment. Okay, if you want to get real jiggy with it in terms of those light gun games, or if you're playing some of the first-person shooters on the Move, you got the PlayStation Move Sharpshooter Attachment. This was released in particular with SOCOM, which is actually a third-person shooter, but this is fantastic for first-person games, which we'll see in a bit. Has a collapsible stock, which is dope, so you can pull it out like that, or you can collapse it to make it more compact for comfort. Again, the functionality of this thing is awesome, and again, the trigger on this feels fantastic. This is a must-have, again, for some first-person shooter games, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. All right, guys, so those are pretty much the main staples that you're going to need when it comes to getting the most out of your PlayStation Move, but what good is a console without its games? And this is where I got a huge beef. I mean, I'm talking 16-ounce sirloin-size beef with a lot of the YouTubers that I've been watching whilst researching the Move for this video. I watched a bunch of other YouTube channels to catch their thoughts. Most of them were caught in the same echo chamber of the Move doesn't work, motion controls don't work outside the Wii. They basically had taken the assessment they saw in the Metal Jesus Rocks video, and I feel like everybody ran with it without actually having played the hardware. This is kind of echoing what they heard somebody else say. And that's what you get. Another issue that I have is when it comes to games, everybody reviews like the same 4 or 5 games that are mediocre, and because of that, they say the PlayStation Move has a small and terrible library of games, which is just not true. There are actually hundreds of games on the Move, many of which are PlayStation 3 games that are actually just compatible with the Move, and some are just Move exclusive. We'll take a look at some of both, and no, I'm not going to cover a lot of those games that you see in other YouTube videos, because again, they pick the wackest games in the library. We do got to talk about Sport Champions though, because Sport Champions is not nearly as bad as people say. So we'll cover that one real quick, and then I'm going to jump into a bunch of games, and we'll go by genre of titles hopefully you didn't know much about, hopefully some you never seen before. Let's go. Okay, promise I'm gonna show you again, like I said, some games that you don't know a lot about, hopefully, but you can't talk about Move without talking about Sport Champions that launched as the pack-in game with the Move, and this was PlayStation's answer to Wii Sports. It's actually a pretty good game, comes with about 5 or 6 events, got some really good graphics compared to what we see on the Wii, although I do give the Wii props for its art style. I like the Mii avatars. I think they're super cute, and this went for more of an exaggerated but more realistic look. Again, graphics wise, I give the edge to this game in graphics, give the edge to Wii Sports in art style. As far as the games, as far as the motion controls, I think the motion controls for the most part work great in all of these games. So you get archery, you got, which is fantastic by the way, gladiator battle, which is fantastic, disc golf, which I really enjoy, and ping pong, which I also really enjoy. It also comes with that bocce game or whatever it's called, show it here, and volleyball. Those two, the bocce game actually is okay, volleyball kind of sucks. But anyway, this game is pretty good. It made one mistake. That was it did not include bowling, okay? The reason why the Wii was so popular was specifically Wii Bowling. I mean, Wii Sports aside, you could have just packed in Wii Bowling with the Wii and the Wii would have sold just as much as it did. I work in Parks and Rec outside of working with the school district, and a lot of community centers, old folks homes still have Wiis hooked up to them because the patrons, they just go in and just bowl until their heart's content. And like I said, the simplistic fashion of the gameplay meant that if you could move your arms, you could play video games, and that bridged the gap between the children's, the adults, the grandparents. It was a stroke of brilliance on Nintendo's part. They would fix that in Sports Champions 2, adding both bowling and boxing, and Sport Champions 2, in my opinion, is better. They brought back archery, which was the favorite from the first one. They swapped out ping pong ball with tennis, and I think this is the better package overall. Unfortunately, I wish they had brought over gladiator battle, but you can't have them all. Like I said, like all games on this system, for the most part, both of these can be had for $5 or less. You can add them to the collection. They're there. Like I said, they're good for a workout. Actually, I use the boxing a lot for cardio on snowy or rainy days, so there you go. Okay, so I'm just gonna dive into this with the type of games that the PlayStation Move does better than anything else in my opinion, and that is of course your light gun games, aka the rail shooters. Here's 4 here that I want to cover, and first let's take a look at Child of Eden. This game is brought to us by Tetsuya Mizuguchi. This is the creator of Lumens and Rez, if you played any of those games. And this is honestly a spiritual successor to Rez. He lost the rights to the name, but he went on to make Child of Eden, which is basically a Rez-like game and even is supposed to take place in the same universe as Rez. This game, like Rez, like Tetris Effect, like Lumens, this is sensory overload, and the music in this is fantastic. The graphics, the lights, the sounds, everything is working in concert with each other to give you one of the most unique experiences I've had on the PlayStation Move, the PlayStation 3, and kind of in games in general. This takes place far in the future. You're surfing through a computer program much like you do in Rez. You're out, I believe, to save the soul of a child named Eden. She is the first girl born in space, and she's long since passed, but her soul and conscience are preserved in this computer program, and it's under threat by this virus, and so you are going in to clear it out, save her, yada yada yada. The story doesn't matter. Again, what matters is the gameplay, the visuals. It's a light gun shooter just like Rez and just like a bunch of other games, but again, it's the presentation for me. This game is absolutely outstanding. Okay, moving on next to a theme that we will see more of in this video. So this is a port of a title that came out on the Wii. And the thing about the PlayStation Move is if you can get the Wii ports on the PlayStation Move, they are often the definitive editions. The PlayStation Move has graphical capabilities leaps and bounds above what you can get on the Wii. And so games like the Umbrella Chronicles and the Dark Side Chronicles, while the PlayStation Move version didn't come out here in America, America, you can get the Japanese version, which is called the Biohazard Chronicles edition. It comes with Dark Side Chronicles and the other one. Now I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, that's not important. Anyway, you get both of them here. I just said the name, but you get both of them here again in stunning HD 1080p, all remastered for the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Move. And this game looks fantastic. It plays fantastic. You get that both, you know, those side stories. It's in Japanese, but I mean, you know, we don't play light gun games for the story anyway, so it's all about the action. The action in this is fantastic. It looks great. This is a must-have if you own a PlayStation Move. If you're in the light gun games, this cost me about $40 bringing it over from Japan. But again, to have both games, yeah, it was a total steal. Okay, up next, again, another kind of expensive title. This is Time Crisis Blazing Storm. And the Blazing Storm edition of Time Crisis has Time Crisis 4, Time Crisis Blazing Storm, and it has Dead Storm Pirates, which is another popular rail shooter that was in arcades at the time. Again, you get all three games here. You can buy Time Crisis 4 standalone on the Move, but this is really the one to get with the Blazing Storm add-on, which actually plays more like a first-person shooter, where you can move freely and things like that. And then you get Dead Storm Pirates, which again, fantastic, kooky kind of rail shooter that involves pirates and hunting for treasure and things like that. So again, get 3 full games here for the price of 1. This is going, last I checked, this was going for about $35 to $50. But honestly, that's not bad when you consider that there are 3 full length games in here. So again, this is another must play if you are in the light gun games in general, that matter the system. But if you collect for the PlayStation 3 and the Move, this is one of the more expensive titles that you can snag now. While it's not actually really expensive at all. But this will definitely be collective in the future as time goes on. Okay, the last game I want to show you for the light gun section of this, and this is House of the Dead Overkill, the extended cut. Again, another port from the Nintendo Wii, but this adds extra weapons, extra levels, extra costumes, extra everything really, and not to mention it is also fully remastered in glorious PlayStation 3 graphics, and so this is my favorite in the House of the Dead series. You play as Agent G, not the same Agent G from before, but Agent G nonetheless, and this guy Isaac Washington, who curses like a sailor. The whole story is absolutely absurd. It's all displayed in this very like B-movie grindhouse style presentation, something out of like a 70s action flick, fully featuring some live action sequences for you that's mixed in there to really sell that experience and sell that aesthetic. This is a super fun game. Again, like a lot of light gun games, you can play this co-op, and me and my brother used to get down on this all the time. It was hilariously fun. Or you can just play 2-player mode by yourself and just dual wield PlayStation Move shooter attachments if you want to. This is a super fun game. That's all I can say. Light gun games, man, on the PlayStation 3 and on the PlayStation Move were some of the best experiences like ever. I mean, compared to what you would get on other consoles or what you would get in the arcades, I mean, this is right up there at the top. So my favorite genre right here, light gun games, definitely got to scoop them up. Real quick, gotta mention a bonus light gun game that I can't believe that I forgot, but this is Dead Space 2. Dead Space 2 is not a light gun game, but if you buy the limited edition of Dead Space 2 on the PlayStation 3, included is, you can see here, Dead Space Extraction. This is the full game that we got on the Nintendo Wii. Again, this is a complete HD 1080p remaster of what we saw on the Wii, so the graphics on this look outstanding. It's a great prequel to the Dead Space trilogy, and can't believe I forgot this, but you definitely need to get this, as this version of Dead Space is under $10. So you get the full Dead Space 2 game and Dead Space Extraction that you can play on the PlayStation Move. Okay, now next genre that we're going to take a look at is first-person shooters, because again, the PlayStation Move went all in with first-person shooters, adding a lot of their own that were compatible or just exclusive, or like I said, going back to other first-person shooters that already exist and giving them the Move treatment. There's quite a few to choose from. I've got 4 titles, so why don't we take a look at the first-person shooter offerings on the PlayStation Move. Okay, BioShock Infinite, first up. I got this version because it includes the original BioShock, which I don't know if it's Move compatible or not, but the third game on here certainly is. If you don't know the story of BioShock, Booker DeWitt is the guy you play as. He goes to Colombia in search of rescuing a girl to clear a debt that he have with some very scary gentlemen. So it's the BioShock 3 story. I haven't played this one yet, to be honest. I haven't checked this one out. This is in the backlog. I'll dust it off, try to show you some gameplay here if I can. If not, I did want to put this on your radar though, because again, if you like first-person shooters, the PlayStation Move has quite a few. Real fast before we talk about the other games, let's talk about first-person shooters on the Move. So a lot of first-person shooters are compatible with the Sharpshooter that you see here. Now, the way this works is you use the navigation controller that you slot here, and you put the Move wand in this slot up top, and you use the navigation controller. It has a analog stick, and so you use the analog stick to move forward, backward, left, and right, whereas you use the wand to control your tilting as where your panning as well as your tilting. And so it actually works pretty good, but there are some drawbacks. The major drawback is that holding a gun out like this for several minutes, after a while, it starts to get heavy and weigh on your hands and such. And so because of that, you'll be wanting to set the controller down to rest or things like that. But remember, this controls the camera. So when you set your gun down to rest, then your character will just look down, and then you gotta hold it up to see where you're going and things like that. They definitely handled this better with the aim controller that came out with the PlayStation VR, but as a first iteration, this actually works pretty well. They came up with a lot of thought in the design of the Sharpshooter. For instance, there's a button right here that in a lot of games you can use that to reload, or you can use this pump action, which is nice if you're using a shotgun. You can take shots and then reload with the shotgun just like that. And so again, we talked about the collapsible stock that works really nice, especially for those long sessions when I get tired. I like to just rest it on my belly so I don't have to worry about like moving down and things like that. But all in all, this is the main way you are going to play first-person shooters, and all in all, I think it works really well. The Move wand responds really well to the panning and tilting, almost too well, as we talked about, because again, if you get tired and you want to try to drop your rifle, you're going to drop your character's orientation as far as which way they're looking. But besides that one little oversight, this works fantastic on all the games that we are going to continue to talk about, including the next one, which is Killzone. Okay, next game on the list, Killzone 3, got the Move treatment in the form of the Killzone trilogy. I also think that you can buy this standalone, and it comes with an update or something like that that gives you Move compatibility. I wanted to put this on people's radar because not only can you play Killzone 3 with Move support, but this also comes with Killzone 2 and a digitally remastered version of Killzone 1. More of like an HD version, not an actual remaster, but Killzone 1, if you played it on the PlayStation 2, the graphics were okay, but there was a lot of issues with texture pop-in and things like that. Frame rate was also pretty lackluster on that version. It was really pushing the PlayStation 2 to its limits in a bad way. It was actually exceeding the limits of the PS2, and that's why we got those performance issues. But a lot of those have been cleaned up with this version of the game, so this comes with the definitive version of the original Killzone, which I thought was worth mentioning. But again, for those of you who don't know the story of Killzone, you play as a member of the ISA. They are in constant war with the Helghast from Helgen, and basically the Helghast are futuristic space Nazis, so there's that. Definitely want to put them down, but there's more nuance than that. It's not so black and white like it was in our own history. The Helghast were pretty much like exiled to Helgen, and then the world poisoned them to where all their hair fell out. Basically looks like radiation poison. They were able to adapt and survive over time, and so now they're kind of striking out at, you know, the people who exiled them in the first place, and, you know, they're just going about it the completely wrong way with declaring war and committing atrocities and whatnot. But the Killzone series is a fantastic shooter series, and Killzone 3 is actually really, really good, and it plays well with the PlayStation Move. When it comes to exclusive first-person shooters on the PlayStation 3, you can't have Killzone without talking about Resistance, and Resistance 3 also got the PlayStation Move treatment. There is a trilogy that you can buy that's really expensive, but it's really just all 3 games like packed in a special slip cover, so I would just recommend just buying each individual game like this. It's much cheaper that way. Resistance 3 takes place in the 1950s, I believe. You play as the guy who killed the main character in Killzone 2, and so he's basically a pariah because of it, even though Hale was becoming one of the Crimea, so I mean, it wasn't his fault for having to pop a bullet in Hale's head, but apparently Hale's blood has some antibodies that can reverse the whole thing, and so he's enlisted again to save the world. He's got to get a doctor to destroy some device or something like that. But again, it plays well. It's a really great game with some good graphics and some really fun weapons to use. So this one I enjoy playing a lot. I hadn't got into the Resistance series before playing this one, and so now I gotta go back and play the first 2 to get the full story, but this one I enjoyed a lot. Okay, last but not least of the first-person shooters that I want to talk about today, again, we got another port from the Nintendo Wii, this time in the form of GoldenEye Reloaded 007, and so this is the updated version to the popular GoldenEye that came out on Nintendo 64. The Wii got it first, I think, in like 2010, and this one followed suit a few years later. Again, redone graphics to match what we're getting on the PlayStation 3, so this is not just like an upscaled Wii game. This is an actual redone for the PlayStation 3's engine, and it looks gorgeous in a lot of cases. A lot of people had issues with this game as they felt like it was a Call of Duty clone, and it pretty much is, I'm not gonna lie, but you know, it pretty much faithfully follows the story of GoldenEye, which we saw in GoldenEye 64 and the movie, with some notable omissions. Robbie Coltrane's character has been removed. Zukov was his name in that, and so is replaced by some random guy. The chick, I can't remember the girl's name, the main antagonist, the female antagonist, she's kind of redone in this, and it's not as cool as she was in the movie at all, but you know, licenses expire over the years, and so they have to make the compromises, including with Pierce Brosnan. And in this game you play as Daniel Craig's iteration of Bond, which honestly was okay with me, as Daniel Craig is one of my favorite Bonds of all time. So we got that more edgier, grittier James Bond to go with the more Call of Duty style flavor that the gameplay gives us. And all in all, though, I think this was really fun. This packs in a lot of extra content as well, as far as like some MI6 missions, some bonus missions, and like challenges that you can do once you beat the game. And so this is a pretty good version. I'm not gonna call it the definitive experience, because I believe the definitive experience is still the original that came out on the N64, just because of the nostalgia for me. And this does not feel the same as playing that game, even when you're playing the 4-player split screen multiplayer, but still pretty dope. Okay, so lastly, before I end this video, we got to talk about third-person video games that came out on the PlayStation Move, and there's a variety. You got your third-person shooters, we got hack and slash games, platformers, and the like, but I wanted to take a look at one of my favorite to start with, and that's Resident Evil 5, the Gold Edition. So playing Resident Evil 4 on my friend's Wii, that was like one of my funnest experiences. Going through Leon's story and being able to use the Wii mote to pull the trigger and shoot enemies, things like that, to get that precise aiming. I thought that the gameplay was done really well for a third-person shooter, and this followed suit. Unfortunately, we did not get a HD remaster of Resident Evil 4 with move functionality, but we did get the move treatment with Resident Evil 5, and the Gold Edition happens to be the definitive version of the game as well. So in this version, they added a bunch of extra costumes, some extra missions in the form of a prologue mission of what happens to Jill and Chris before the events of Resident Evil 5, as well as another campaign where you play as Jill and another person, I can't remember, Lost in Nightmares is what it's called. They go through the Tri-Cell facility together. They also brought back Mercenaries mode from the definitive edition of PlayStation 4, and so they got all new characters and arenas for that. They got a lot of content jam-packed into this, and of course including the full game with move support. So the best way to play this is in conjunction with the navigation controller, of course, and you can use the navigation controller to move around. And when you posture to pull out your weapon, you can use the move controller to aim and get those headshots. The accuracy is off the chain with this, and I was popping heads all day, no problem. This game, though, has one flaw that I don't understand why they made this decision. It makes me angry, and it's with the controls. While the controls are fantastic and work really well, the trigger button is not the shoot button. The trigger button is the posture button that I think you use to slash with the knife. You use the move button to pull the trigger. And while you get used to it and it's fine, the move button is on top of the controller when you're holding in that orientation. So it would have been nice to squeeze the trigger to shoot enemies as opposed to pushing the move button. Again, it works fine. You get used to it. It's not a huge deal, but it was just a crazy oversight that why that you do that. Anyway, I'm missing the point again. It's a fantastic game. Resident Evil 5 is not my favorite in the series. It's close though. It's up there. Resident Evil 4 brought the atmosphere that Resident Evil 5 didn't have, but Resident Evil 5 really brought the action, a great selection of weapons and things like that. So I don't hate Resident Evil 5 at all. I hate the AI when you play Resident Evil 5 because Sheva doesn't know what she's doing. But other than that, it's a great game, and playing it on the move, if you've played this game every which way and want to get a new experience, this is a great way to experience the game. Keeping with our survival horror games today, also a definitive edition we got in the director's cut of Deadly Premonition. This is a wacky survival horror game that originally came out on the Xbox 360, but it has some issues with the graphics and the frame rate and things like that. And I'm happy to report in this director's cut, there's still issues with the graphics and the frame rate and things like that, but that's not the point. The point is that this game has a great atmosphere. You play as an FBI agent who talks to like this imaginary friend of his named Zach, and I haven't beaten the game, so I don't know if that becomes a plot in the story later on, but he's investigating this murder in the US state of Washington, and a lot of people who watch the show Twin Peaks in the 90s will give automatic comparisons to this game. It is pretty much like a video game version of Twin Peaks, and the developers, they knew exactly what they were doing when they wrote this story and the scene and just everything about this game. Now, this game is a third-person shooter survival horror game, much like Resident Evil, but they did actually have the foresight to make the trigger the shoot button. So shooting enemies is actually pretty easy in this game. You can press and hold down the move button to actually get a target lock. So if you're just trying to shoot an enemy center mass, or hard to reach or hard to aim out enemy, you can use your auto aim like that, shoot them center mass, or you can get, like I like to get precise with it and then pull the trigger to use those headshots. Again, graphics in this game look like an upscaled PS2 game, but this is actually still a really fun game all the same. And this one is kind of uncommon, so if you find a copy of this, go ahead and buy it. I do think that this is going to be one of those $80 plus games in the future. Okay, penultimate game that I'm going to talk about today. This is another port from the Nintendo Wii, and a port that a lot of you may not know actually existed. This is No More Heroes, Heroes Paradise for the PlayStation Move, and again, this was like a Wii exclusive. So the fact that this got ported over to the PlayStation 3 with Move support is fantastic. In this game, you play as Travis Touchdown. He finds himself the 11th best assassin in the world, and so he's approached by a shady figure who task him with taking down the remaining top 10 assassins in the world in a bid to become the #1 killer on planet Earth. So he takes on that job. This is a pseudo 51 game through and through. It's got the highly stylized graphics, the wacky storyline, the wacky characters, all the innuendo. Like I said, it's straight up pseudo 51. You take enemies out and slash them to pieces with your beam katana. It's a fantastic game. You actually you move with the nav controller, you hack and slash with the PlayStation Move button, and then once you weaken enemies, when you are ready to pull off those super combos and those cinematic kills, then you'll use the move wand to slash in conjunction to pull off the kill. Also, in regular combat, while you use the PlayStation Move button to hack and slash, you can move the wand up and down and left and right to change his orientation and change his stance. And if he's using a high stance, he'll do different combos as opposed to using a low stance. That also goes for blocking and things like that too. So all in all, this is the same experience we got on the Wii with beefed up graphics and controls that are just as good, if not better. This is also one of the rare titles, as it's uncommon, because I don't think a lot of people know about it, but because of that, it's not super expensive. So $30 in most cases will get you this game. Go ahead and grab it. Last game that I'm going to talk about today, we got to end on a little bit of controversy. This is actually my favorite game on the Move, and I know that's gonna, we can fight in the comments or we can fight on the streets. I don't care, okay? This is brought to us by Sony. So this is an exclusive made for the Move from the ground up, okay? Brought to us as a first party title by Sony. This is the Harry Potter game that we never got. It's Sorcery, okay? I say the Harry Potter game we never got, even though Hogwarts Legacy just came out. That's the Harry Potter game we've all been waiting for. But before that, I would argue that it was this game, and I don't know how people feel about this game out in the gamer sphere, but this is a great game. You play as Finn. He is a sorcerer apprentice. He ends up going on this quest to take out the Nightmare Queen and her henchmen, and to get his friends safely back to her father. Things like that. Like, it's a great game. It's actually based more on like Scottish and like Irish folklore, so it's not the same old like Anglo-Saxon stuff that we see when it comes to like sorcery and magic and things like that. So you're dealing with some different names, some different lore, things like that. So that puts a unique spin on it. You start off in this game with a wand and a spell called the Arcane Bolt, which is basically an attack you can use to dish out some punishment on your enemies. You also get a bunch of different spells as far as like elemental attacks, like you can use ground attacks and ice attacks and flame attacks and things like that. You can do like ultimate strikes against the ground. There's a magical shield you can use. You make potions in real time, and then like you have to put the wand up to your mouth to drink it to get your health back, things like that. You can also make a bunch of other different potions to give yourself different abilities and buffs. This is a fantastic game. It works really well. The controls are what really do it for me, because if the controls were bad, I mean, that's when it comes to Move games, like the controls have to be on point to sell the experience, and this game does that. With the wand, whichever way you flick it, it's gonna go in that direction. If enemies are to the left of you, you can throw your wand to the right or to the left to attack enemies to the left, to the right. You can even curve your shots wanted style, so you can curve and like hit enemies behind cover. Like, it works really well. Occasionally it does kind of wonk out, and you'll like attack something that you weren't aiming at, but like 90% of the time it does exactly what it's supposed to. And when this game is doing exactly what it's supposed to, then it's on. I kind of want to do a live stream of this game at some point just to show people what I mean. This is a great game, and it's my favorite on the PlayStation Move because it gives us all the promises the Move was supposed to give us, right? That immersion, and that's what it is for me. I love games that get me immersed. That's why I like PlayStation VR so much, because I like to, as much as I can like be in the game. Like Sorcery does that in a way that a lot of Move titles and a lot of Wii titles do not. So that is why it's my favorite game on the PlayStation Move. Okay, guys, so I do believe that's all I got for you, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What do you guys think about the PlayStation Move? Honestly, there are a bunch of different titles that I did not talk about. Again, the Move does not have a small library. I've got some more here. We got platformers like Little Big Planet. We got RPGs like Rune Factory. We got great racing games like Need for Speed Most Wanted. I just didn't cover these games because I simply didn't have the time, but we will revisit the Move sometime in the future and talk about some more great games. But again, that's all I got. Let's talk about it. Questions, comments, concerns, threats down below. If you like this content, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.